I'm hurt, I'm numb, I'm angry, and I want justice for my baby and my
It's
grandbaby.
3 in the morning, Thanksgiving Day. A young woman pulls up to a house in Lowell, Massachusetts. She has her baby with her, 2 months old, still in the carrier. She knocks. He lets her in, and she is never seen alive again. By the time her family realizes something is wrong, they're sitting around a Thanksgiving table with an empty chair. They try calling her, no answer. They track her phone. The signal is still at his house. So they drive there. The lights are off. Her car is gone. And the man who was supposed to be the father of her child is nowhere to be found. But here's what he didn't know. He was wearing a GPS tracker that night. Because he was already on bail for a gun charge, the tracker didn't lie. It placed him in that house during the exact window she was killed. Then it showed him flee, drive an hour away, and cut the bracelet off his own wrist. When police finally broke into that locked back bedroom, they found Dejah Jenkins-Minus on the floor. She had been stabbed 58 times. Her neck was broken. Her baby was gone. Who was Leonard Robinson really? What did those social media posts say that prosecutors called the motive? And how did a family app meant to track a lost phone end up cracking open a murder investigation on Thanksgiving night? That story is what we're about to get into. Welcome to your channel. If you're new here, this is the place for real cases, real victims, and real stories told the way they deserve to be told. If this is the kind of content you're here for, hit that like button, drop a comment below, and subscribe so you never miss a case. Now, let's talk about Dejah. Dejah Jenkins-Minus grew up in Boston. People who knew her described a girl who lit up every room she walked into, cheerleading, laughter, a stubborn kind of hope that followed her everywhere. She had just graduated high school. She had just given birth to her daughter. At 22, she was building something. Slowly, imperfectly, but building. Friends remembered a young woman who poured everything into the people she loved. Her mother, Latoya, called her a beautiful soul, not in the hollow way people talk about the dead. In the specific, personal way a mother talks about a daughter she raised and watched become someone real. Davon Holiday, a childhood friend, put it plainly. World just lost an amazing person. Leonard Robinson had been part of Dejah's life for a while. On again, off again. The kind of relationship that keeps restarting because hope is stubborn and love doesn't always follow logic. He lived alone in a house on Llewellyn Street in Lowell, about 25 miles north of Boston. A different city. A different world in some ways. When Dejah found out she was pregnant, the dynamics shifted. A child changes the math on everything. Suddenly the relationship wasn't just about two people anymore. There was a daughter to consider, a future that needed a foundation, but something was rotting underneath. Months before Thanksgiving, Leonard had started posting on social media. Not sweet things, not excited father things, doubt, anger, resentment dressed up as suspicion. He posted publicly, questioning whether he was even the biological father. He demanded a DNA test. He stated clearly and without much subtlety that he was angry at Dejah. Prosecutors would later stand in a courtroom and point to those posts as evidence of motive. But in the weeks before November 25th, those words were just noise on a timeline. The kind of thing people scroll past without realizing what they're reading. Dejah kept trying. That matters. She didn't vanish from his life. She didn't cut contact and move on. She held on to the possibility that things could stabilize for her daughter's sake, maybe for her own. She texted him. She made plans. She believed, or wanted to believe, that showing up was enough. In the early hours of November 25, 2021, her phone buzzed with messages from Leonard. We don't know exactly what those texts said. What we know is that she responded. What we know is that around 1 in the morning, she packed up her 2-month-old daughter carrier, bag, everything a new mother carries, and drove from Boston to Lowell, 25 miles, in the dark, on Thanksgiving morning. A neighbor named Roger Rondeau was still awake. He saw Dejah arrive, watched her carry the baby inside, saw Leonard open the door and let them in. She brought in her baby, the baby carrier, and a bag, and he let her in, Rondeau recalled. He thought nothing of it at the time. Why would he? Hours passed. Back in Boston, Dejah's family was preparing for the holiday. The kind of gathering that takes all day, people coming and going, food on the stove, a table being set. Dejah was expected. Her daughter was expected. There was a seat for both of them. She didn't show. Calls went unanswered. The family wasn't immediately alarmed. Thanksgiving plans shift. Traffic happens. Bobbies make everything unpredictable, but the hours kept moving, and Dejah kept not calling back. At some point, and this detail is important, someone in the family opened a phone tracking application. The kind of app millions of families use without ever imagining they'll need it for something like this. It showed Dejah's device sitting completely still, stationary, pinned to an address on Llewellyn Street, still at his house. They drove past twice during the evening. Both times the property looked empty, dark windows, no sign of movement, most significantly no sign of Dejah's vehicle. Leonard's neighbor later confirmed what the family suspected. He had driven away in her car. "We were having dinner," Rondeau said quietly, "and she was not." By the time Friday morning arrived, the family had made a decision. They contacted Lowell police and requested a welfare check. Officers responded to the Llewellyn Street address at approximately 10:45 in the morning. What happened next, inside that house, in that locked back room, is where this story shifts from a missing persons call into something far darker, something that would take 58 pieces of evidence and one broken GPS bracelet to begin to explain. Officers arrived at Llewellyn Street expecting a welfare check. What they found changed everything. The exterior of the property gave nothing away. A quiet residential address, no obvious signs of disturbance, no sounds coming from inside. From the outside, it looked like a house where nothing had happened. But Dejah's phone signal was still pinging from in there. Police knocked. Nobody answered. A relative of Leonard's had also made their way to the address around the same time. Drawn by the same growing unease, the family in Boston had been sitting with all night. This person managed to gain entry through a window. They moved through the house, and then they reached a bedroom at the back. The door was locked. They knocked, they called out, "Silence." So they started hitting it, kicking it, throwing themselves against it until the frame gave way and the door swung open. What they found on the other side of that door will stay with everyone who was present for the rest of their lives. Dejah Jenkins-Minus was on the ground beside an air mattress. She was not breathing. Paramedics were called. Lowell police secured the scene. Dejah was pronounced dead where she lay. A knife was recovered nearby. The medical examiner's findings, released in the days that followed, were the kind of details that silence a courtroom. Dejah had suffered a fractured neck. She had been stabbed 58 times. 58. That number is not an accident of violence. That number is rage. That number is personal. Forensic experts and prosecutors alike understand that the volume of wounds in a case like this communicates something beyond the act itself. It tells you about the relationship between the killer and the victim. It tells you how much hatred had been building, how long it had been sitting there waiting. The chief medical examiner ruled the manner of death a homicide. Cause of death: multiple sharp force injuries. The knife recovered at the scene was consistent with the wounds on Dejah's body. Meanwhile, across the city, a 2-month-old girl was somewhere without her mother. This was the detail that pulled at people when the story began spreading. Not just that a young woman had been murdered, though that alone was devastating, but that an infant had been in that house, had been present in that environment, had been carried out of there by a man now suspected of killing the child's own mother. The baby was located safely in Boston. She was unharmed, but the circumstances surrounding exactly when she was removed from that house, and by whom, and under what conditions, those questions added another layer of horror to an already unbearable set of facts. Investigators moved quickly. A search warrant was obtained for the Llewellyn Street property. Officers went through the residence methodically, and what they pulled out built a case that prosecutors would describe as unusually well documented. The knife, recovered, consistent with the murder weapon. The GPS data. This is where the investigation became airtight. Leonard Robinson had been on pretrial release at the time of Dejah's death, facing existing firearm charges from a separate case out of Suffolk Superior Court. As a condition of that release, he was legally required to wear an electronic monitoring bracelet at all times, a GPS tracker strapped to his body, transmitting his location continuously. He apparently forgot about it. Or perhaps he simply didn't care. The tracker placed him inside the Llewellyn Street address during the precise window prosecutors identified as the time of Dejah's death. It recorded him leaving the property. It tracked his movements as he put distance between himself and what he had done driving for approximately an hour before the signal showed him stopping. And then the bracelet went dark. He had cut it off his own wrist. That moment, that specific decision to physically remove the device, became one of the most damaging pieces of evidence against him, because it demonstrated consciousness of guilt. It showed a man who understood exactly what he had done and tried, too late, to erase the digital trail behind him. He had already driven away in Dejah's car. He left her locked in a room. He left their daughter. And he ran. On November 29th, 4 days after Thanksgiving, authorities located Leonard Robinson in Boston. He was taken into custody without resistance. Middlesex County District Attorney Marion Ryan and Lowell Police Superintendent Kelly Richardson confirmed the arrest publicly.
What we have in this situation, Your Honor, is that Dejah is found in the house that he was living in alone, in his bedroom, which was locked when any witness or the police came to that location. What the medical examiner's office noted was that Dejah's neck was fractured, that she had over 58 stab wounds to her body by a sharp object by the defendant, questioning whether he was the father of the child, questioning whether he should have a DNA test, and also stating that he was mad at Dejah, and I would suggest providing motive.
Confirmed the arrest publicly. Robinson was transported, processed, and arraigned the following morning at Lowell District Court. He walked into that courtroom and entered a plea of not guilty. He was ordered held without bail. Outside the courthouse, Dejah's family said nothing to cameras. There were no statements, no interviews, just grief moving silently through a corridor. LaToya-Minus, Dejah's mother, sent a single message to reporters. "I'm lost, I'm hurt, I'm numb, I'm angry, and I want justice for my baby and my grandbaby."
I'm hurt, I'm numb, I'm angry, and I want justice for my baby and my grandbaby.
But the question nobody had fully answered yet was the one sitting underneath all of it. Why? The GPS placed him there. The knife connected him to the scene. The flight confirmed guilty knowledge. But motive, the thing that explains how a man gets to 58 stab wounds on the mother of his child, that answer was hiding somewhere else entirely. It was hiding on his phone, in posts he had written himself, and published for anyone to see. Every murder has a before. A period of time leading up to the act itself, weeks, sometimes months, during which the killer's intentions begin surfacing. Not always in obvious ways, sometimes in arguments nobody witnesses, sometimes in behavior that only makes sense in hindsight. In Leonard Robinson's case, it surfaced on social media. Publicly, carelessly, in plain view of anyone following his accounts. Prosecutors combing through his digital history after the arrest found a pattern that told a clear story. Robinson had been posting about Dejah with increasing hostility in the period preceding her death. He questioned, repeatedly and openly, whether he was the biological father of their daughter. He demanded a paternity test. He aired grievances about the relationship in posts that read less like frustration and more like escalating contempt. He stated directly that he was angry at her. These were not private messages, not things whispered in confidence to a close friend. These were public declarations, the kind of posts that age badly once a prosecutor prints them out and hands them to a jury. In a courtroom, those posts became Exhibit A in the argument that this was not a spontaneous act, not a moment of lost control, but something that had been building, fed by insecurity, resentment, and a particular kind of rage that fixates on a woman's autonomy and punishes her for it. Dejah had done nothing wrong. She had given birth to his daughter. She had driven 25 miles in the middle of the night because she still believed in the possibility of something better. She showed up. And he had already decided, somewhere in the days or weeks before, that she would pay for existing in a way that made him feel threatened. The case against Robinson was, by most legal standards, overwhelming. GPS data placing him at the scene, physical evidence connecting him to the weapon, flight behavior demonstrating awareness of guilt, a digital motive trail he constructed himself, and a neighbor who watched Dejah walk through that front door alive. Middlesex County prosecutors charged him with murder in the first degree. He pleaded not guilty. He was held without bail from the moment of his arraignment, a reflection of how seriously the court viewed both the severity of the charge and the risk he posed. Court proceedings moved through the standard pretrial phases: motions, discovery, the slow machinery of a murder case working its way toward trial. Leonard Robinson sat in custody while the legal process unfolded around him. At the time of this video, a confirmed verdict has not yet been publicly reported. What is confirmed is that the evidence assembled against him represents one of the more thoroughly documented domestic homicide cases in recent Massachusetts history, and that Middlesex County prosecutors have made clear their intention to pursue the full weight of a first-degree murder conviction. But beyond the legal architecture of the case, there is a simpler story here. A young mother drove to see the father of her child on a holiday. She brought their baby. She trusted him enough to walk through that door. And the people who loved her spent Thanksgiving sitting around a table, calling a phone that nobody picked up, tracking a signal that refused to move, slowly understanding that something had gone terribly wrong. Dejah-Minus lost her daughter that morning. Dejah's baby girl lost her mother before she was old enough to form a single memory of her face. A neighborhood that thought it heard nothing went to bed while a woman lay in a locked room. Dejah Jenkins-Minus was 22 years old. She had just graduated, just given birth, just started the part of life where everything is still possible, where the mistakes feel recoverable and the future feels negotiable. People who knew her said she was goal-driven, hardworking, the kind of person who would sacrifice anything for the people depending on her. She deserved to grow old. She deserved to raise her daughter. She deserved to find out what her life was going to become. Instead, her name joined a list that grows longer every single year: young black women whose murders receive a fraction of the coverage, the outrage, and the urgency that other victims routinely command. Cases that slip through the media cycle quietly. Families left fighting for attention in a system that was never fully designed with them in mind. Telling Dejah's story, saying her name, making sure the details of what happened to her travel further than a local news brief, is the least this case deserves. If you made it this far, you already understand why cases like this matter. Drop her name in the comments. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And if you are not yet subscribed, do it now, because there are more stories coming. More names that deserve to be spoken out loud, in full, with the care they were denied elsewhere. Dejah Jenkins-Minus. Say her name.